Welcome, everybody, to a brand new episode of Identity Talk for Educators Live, the show for the unsung heroes of education. I'm your host, Kwame Sarfo-Mensah. And if this is your first time tuning in to the podcast, I welcome you and I hope that today's episode is one that will have you coming back for more. And if you're a returning listener or viewer of the podcast, as always, I welcome you back and hope that today's episode is one that you will find informative, enlightening, and as always, insightful. So, before we get into our main event, if you are on YouTube, please hit that red subscribe button so you can get future notifications on new episodes. Also, if you're listening from Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcast, make sure you subscribe there as well. And for those who would like to donate so that we can keep on growing this platform, there are four ways in which you can do that. The first is through Cash App using our handle, $IDTALK4ED. The second is through Venmo using our handle there, @ Kwame SM. And for those who have a PayPal account, you can access us with this URL, paypal.me/Kwame SM. And then for my longtime subscribers, my longtime supporters of Identity Talk, if you've loved the podcast over the past 5+ years and the content coming from the brand, please consider becoming a forum member. This is the exclusive membership space for the Identity Talk community. And through this membership, you'll be able to get access to early episodes, access to behind the scenes footage, some bonus episodes, merch, discounts, and other incentives. So to learn more about that, you can go to our main website at identitytalk4educators.com. And for my avid readers, if you haven't purchased a copy of Learn to Relearn, what are you waiting for? This is the book that you need to have if you are someone that is all about centering the humanity, not just of our young people, but of all people. And it's a book that continues to be the gift that keeps on giving. I can't tell you the amount of joy and the amount of adulation and praise that I've received from the community. Those who have bought the book, those who have shared the book with their loved ones and colleagues in their schools. It's just been overwhelming. And I'm just so excited to see how this book has touched the hearts and also the lives of so many people. So if you want to be a part of that legacy, if you want to be a part of the community, please make sure you get a copy today. Also, if you've already read the book and you love what you read, please leave a 5-star review on Amazon, Goodreads, or wherever you leave your reviews. And you can learn more about the book at learningtorelearn.com. Thank you all again for the support. All right, y'all. So today we're going to be talking about a topic that we've covered in previous episodes of the podcast. We're looking at multilingualism. We're looking at how we can center the linguistic backgrounds of our learners in schools and how language is so central to the identities of so many of us. So to help us facilitate this conversation, I have an awesome guest who's going to be joining us. And I'm not going to waste any time. I'm going to bring her on right now. So without further ado, I want to bring on Aylin Gregg to the podcast to talk with us about her journey, to talk with us about everything that she's done from her early years in education up until now. So let's bring Aylin on. Hello.
Hi, thank you so much for the amazing introduction, Kwame.
How are we doing today?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Really excited to be here. Thank you so
Yes.
much for the invitation.
Well, thank you for accepting the invitation. I'm excited for this conversation, and I know you are tuning in from Malaysia, correct?
That is correct. Kuala
Yeah,
Lumpur, yes.
yeah,
There's a
Kuala
huge time
Lumpur.
difference.
Yes, yes, not too bad. I mean, we're talking. It's
Not as
about
bad
what,
as
6 hours,
Germany or
6 hour difference. Not too bad.
yeah,
I
yeah, I
listen.
suppose.
I've had guests tuning in from Singapore uh, and other countries, and the time difference was like almost a half day, like 11, 12 hours, and I had to figure out a way to
How do
make it
you
work.
juggle that?
I can
Fitting
I
this
can
into
work
the
with 6 hours.
schedule. Yeah. I mean, it requires waking up, what, 4 in the morning sometimes, or just, I don't know. It's
I will
crazy.
say this: in the early years of this podcast, I was doing that. I'd wake up, I'd take a nap, and I'd wake up 2, 3 in the morning to do a podcast, and I realized I wasn't always my best self when I didn't get a full night's sleep.
I
So
can see that. Yes.
over the
Well, I've got
years,
3 kids, and sleep
yeah,
is very rare anyway. So
yes, yes. Um, I think now that I am a little older, I have 2 kids, I have a wife, I'm being more mindful of setting time boundaries when it comes to the
absolutely,
podcast and
absolutely.
making sure that I'm doing it within a time that is reasonable for me, but also for the guests who come on here. So I'm
Absolutely.
glad that
You
we're
can
able
always
to,
find a middle way, right?
there you
Yeah.
go. So I'm just so glad that we're able to have the conversation, which is in the morning time for me, which is perfect because I
Good
have to
one.
do it at nighttime. So thank you for that.
No worries, no worries. And for me, it is straight after school time. In fact, I'm still at school in the school building. So if there's a student knocking on the door saying, Miss Aylin, never mind.
Nah, not a problem at all. It gives
Perfect.
the episode a bit more character when we have
I
that
know.
background noise.
Authentic.
So we'll
Yes.
bring it in. Yes, for the authenticity. Okay. So, Island, I had a chance to look through your story, and of course, with every guest, I do my research. You have a very fascinating story, which is why you are here.
Thank you.
You, your journey starts in Turkey, your
It
home
does.
country where you grew up. So I
That
want
is
to
good.
start there, and I want to give you an opportunity to share about your early background, but also who or what ultimately inspired you to want to become an educator.
It's not just one person and it's not just one event. I can say it's accumulation of so many different experiences and people that took part in my life. However, if I think in retrospect, during childhood, I don't remember thinking I'm going to be a teacher one day. Never. I wanted to be a singer, in fact, if that means
Hmm.
anything. I loved singing.
Yeah.
Although my personality, when I look at my personality, I've always tried to empathize with people. I've always tried to help guide people, listen to them. I believe I've always been a good listener. So all these positive attributes to educators, now thinking back, I can see that I've always had those. However, during childhood, becoming a teacher was not my dream job, I could say.
Hmm.
Things started shifting when I was around 12. We're talking about my middle school years. And during middle school years, I had this amazing English teacher, and that was English. I did not know English at all till then. So it sparked an interest. Learning English also opened my mind to new perspectives, to new cultures in Turkish context, educational context. It was mostly British culture. I remember having these textbooks, and whilst learning English, obviously, it comes with the culture, whole package. So I started learning about how other people live, which started my interest in language learning in general. And that kind of led to linguistic studies for university, and sociolinguistics was especially my area of interest, because how language influences identity, how it plays a role in our social interactions, etc., in different cultural backgrounds, was always my interest. And second year of university, I had the teaching certificate. At the same university, I was studying linguistics, but it was almost a contingency plan, to be honest.
Got you.
So even until then, I didn't think I was going to become a teacher, because my dream from then on was to become a linguist and go do field work, do research, study languages, etc. In Turkish context, I had to have a contingency plan. So I had the teaching certification. And after university, I worked in different sectors first. And then I realized it wasn't for me, because for me, the most important thing was human connections. And education seemed to be the best platform for that. It has it inherently, right? It's tied in all together with human connections. So I started teaching because the other sectors didn't work. And I remember the first school I was working at as you know, a teacher having the first year experience, internship, let's call it.
Okay.
I had a student who was a brilliant grade 6 student, and she had to have one-on-one classes because she had cancer. She was during a treatment process, so they didn't want her to be sitting with other kids in the classroom. So for English, they asked me if I would do one-on-one classes with her. I said, of course I will do. And then we created this amazing connection with her, and so many positive things that she started showing in terms of how I, as her teacher, contributed to her life, etc. And then, unfortunately, we lost her after a year. But to this day, all the connection we had together still stays with me as a teacher, because that connection and what she inspired in me is kind of the foundation of me falling in love with teaching. Only for the
Wow.
reason that you can make that happen as a teacher. You can change somebody's life. You can make somebody happy. And that was the starting point. Of course, I had this amazing teacher when I was at high school. Back then, we didn't have internet. And I loved listening to English songs to learn English through songs. But you couldn't back then type in lyrics for this song, because I couldn't do that. I was just making up words because I couldn't understand the accents in every English song. So I would go to this teacher, and she would go home, listen to this song, write down the lyrics for me, and bring it to the classroom.
That's awesome.
It's such a simple thing, isn't it, Kwame? It's such
Yeah.
a simple thing, but it shows how much she valued her students. And even that teeny tiny gesture still stays with me. And I love these stories. So right now, I have become a teacher because of all these experiences. And hopefully, I am making an impact on my students as well.
And I believe you are. I can assure you you are. Just
Thank you.
through listening to the story, I can tell that there are a lot of students you've had over the years who have been impacted
I hope
by
so.
your presence in
That
their schools.
that's all there is, isn't it? I remember this, just to add this perspective as well. Years later, after I started teaching, I was talking to a colleague who had just started teaching, new graduate, And she was trying international teaching as an experience, as an adventure. And I remember her saying to me, I don't want to teach my whole life, because she was a scientist. She was teaching
Right.
science. She said, I want to do something more in the world. I want to make an impact in the world. I want to become a scientist. And I remember saying to her, what better way than teaching, becoming a teacher, if you really want to make an impact in the world? I mean, it gives me goosebumps, really, because what we are doing day in, day out with those students, imagine having 20 students in one classroom. Whatever you give them, they're like branches going around, spreading. So
Yes.
you've got your goal already. That's what I believe.
Absolutely.
Impact.
Yeah, I hear you with that. So
Yeah.
I want to go back a little bit
Mhm.
because you mentioned how you got interested in wanting to learn English. And I know in different countries, traditional language preservation is so critical,
That's right.
especially when you're talking about identity, right?
That's right.
So I don't know how it is in the Turkish context, but I'm wondering, how did your parents and family members view multilingualism in the household? Was it encouraged when you were at home?
It was encouraged, but to be honest, English language in Turkey, I can't speak for now because I haven't lived in Turkey for a while now. But back then, at least, learning English was mostly to do with security for a future.
Yeah.
And so you could get a better job, you could get paid more because you speak English, etc.
Still
So it
happens
wasn't
today.
it does, yeah, I mean, I'm sure it does, for sure. So there wasn't so much of thinking, oh, my child is becoming multilingual. Although there is this saying in Turkish, how do I translate this? Let me think. One language means one person, two languages means two people. Now, hang in there, I'll explain.
Mhm.
So if you learn one language, if you know one language, then that's your identity, and that's just one person. If you learn another language, you're adding new perspectives to yourself, which
Gotcha.
becomes almost like another person within you.
Mhm.
Am I making
I
sense?
like that.
So I've always loved this saying, and I use this as an example in multilingualism all the time. However, the belief is not actually there culturally. And in my household, I don't come from an educated household, in the sense that my mother and my mother, my mother and my father, um, they could only study till the end of middle school.
Okay.
But they always encouraged myself and my siblings, two siblings, to study, to have a better future.
Mhm.
And English studying was also encouraged in my household. But even then, so I am the only English speaker in our family.
Okay.
My siblings, my parents didn't speak English. My siblings don't speak English. It's just me, because I always felt so curious about other perspectives. I think that kept me going with English and just traveling, etc. Yeah, they supported me. My parents, my siblings, they supported me. But at the same time, I think there was always this intimidation, as they saw me not just being interested in English language itself, but also
Yes.
other cultures. Uh, was a little intimidating, I could tell. They thought I was changing, and there were lots of doubts around, oh, is she going to lose her identity, etc.
Mm,
Unfortunately, maybe it's a stigma around learning a new language, knowing about another culture, but so that was the case. Also, my father's side were from Albania. My father's mother and father were forced to move from Albania to Turkey during population exchange after the First World War. And they are first-hand examples of assimilation. I often wondered growing up why they didn't speak Albanian with their kids or with us, the grandchildren, because it's such an amazing opportunity just passing your language, Albanian language, onto the next generations. However, they didn't do it. But years later, I read this amazing book, Twice a Stranger by Bruce Clark. In the book, he talks about all the challenges during that population exchange. And then I understood. They wanted to be accepted. They wanted to sound Turkish. They wanted to live like a Turkish person. So they kept the language to themselves. So there is so much loss and fear behind a language, behind the silence of a language not spoken in their stories. Maybe these kind of experiences affects people as well. You know, wherever you are, speak that language. So you assimilate sort of approach. I don't know.
Talk for Educators Live podcast is just one piece of the work that we do under Identity Talk Consulting, which we've had since 2019. And since then, we've had the privilege of working with 40 different schools, districts, and organizations across the globe. And we want to continue to add to that number in this new year. So if you are a school, if you're an educator or an organization that's looking to receive professional development and consulting services within any of our pillars, whether it's anti-bias, anti-racist practices, culturally responsive teaching, or identity affirming education, we are the firm for you, and we love to learn more about your needs. When you have a chance, make sure you go to our website at identitytalk4educators.com to learn more about our services and to schedule a discovery call today. We love to hear from you. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned about assimilation because I did have a question regarding that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious to know, as someone who has taught in different contexts, different countries. So you've been in China, you've been in Germany, now you're in Malaysia.
That's right.
I'm wondering, the more time you spent away from Turkey, when you do come back to Turkey, do you feel a sense of isolation from people within your community? Because you mentioned some inklings of it with your parents, but I'm wondering if that's something that is a common reaction when you do back home.
Absolutely. When I go back, the first thing I feel, and this is to do with language acquisition process, I guess, in terms of language, I most certainly struggle. For some reason, I start translating from English to Turkish, which is so strange. And my sister, even one day, my sister just said to me, you know, we don't say it like that in Turkish, right? So these are funny examples, of course. However, one of the reasons that I moved away from Turkey was that people around me especially liked living the local life in their own bubbles.
Got you.
There is nothing wrong with that. I completely support it. If people are happy, then that's perfect. For me, it wasn't the right way of living. So when I go back, that's one of the things that I struggle with. Just not going out on adventures too much, but just living there. So cultural aspects are difficult for me to adjust back into, but also linguistically, I struggle as well. And also, I remember when I was growing up and learning English, this was the same story, because people living local life do not necessarily relate to your experiences when you go away. So when you go back, and of course, bring a part of you from all these experiences outside of Turkey, they take it the wrong way. They take it in an offensive way for some reason. Oh, you want to be like them, sort of approach.
Right,
Which
right.
is something, yes, which is something that I never liked anyway. But I do understand where they're coming from. When you live in a bubble, of course, that's all you know. So anything that's out of that bubble and box seems strange. Yeah. So I think these are the struggles that I see when I go back to Turkey at the moment.
And I think that's why young people who spend most of their lives attending international schools, they can relate to each other because they feel that same sense of isolation. They feel like
Absolutely.
they're an outcast at times. And I'm
That's
pretty
correct.
sure when you were going through your journey, being an international school teacher, and probably in every country you've been, you're probably maybe the only Turkish teacher on staff,
In
right?
most
So it's
places.
like in most
That's right.
places, because it's
That's
not
right.
something that maybe is as commonplace as it is for other countries. So I
That's right.
think so as you're talking about the processing, because I find that interesting. Usually when you do acquire English as a second language, from
Mm-hmm.
what people have told me, is usually like we translate from our first language
Mm-hmm.
to English.
That's right.
So for you to say that it was vice versa, I'm like,
Yes.
that's fascinating. But then I would think that having that reverse process would then strengthen your proficiency in your first language. I would think.
I think so. That would go against the social use of language,
Got
as
you.
my sister told me. You know, we don't
Yeah.
say it like that in Turkish. um, but they would understand, of course. The thing is, what brain does first language is stored in the brain in a different way than the second language. That is why for first language, it's believed that they say it's believed that it never fossilizes, which means it never dies. You
Nice,
might
right?
somehow uh, lose the practice of it, like I do sometimes. However, the minute you go into the context where your first language is spoken, your brain has this amazing ability to bring all the knowledge that you've got up to the surface. Second language acquisition is not so much like that. Now, there might be research to be done about this after so many years, or maybe there is, that I'm not aware of, after so many years of living in the context where your second language is spoken. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
brain does this thing, okay, I'm used to this now. Now you're trying to bring back the first language. I'm a bit confused, sort of state. I don't know.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, but it does happen, honestly. And so when I lived in Germany, for example, there is a big Turkish population in Germany. And
Mm-hmm.
for years, when I was in Turkey, all these people coming from Germany for summer holiday, let's say, back to Turkey, and they were ridiculed for their pronunciation, their accent, the way they use grammar. I remember all these stories growing up in Turkey. And then you understand when you move away from Turkey, when you learn another language, live in the context of that new language, then you realize your brain gets tired. You can't quickly shift. You can't quickly code switch, or you have to code switch sometimes. You can't think of this word in Turkish because you often use it in your second language. So it all makes sense, and I wish everybody could understand this in terms of our multilingual learners, for example. They need to somehow integrate their first languages in order to process and intake the input, you know.
So, in you saying that, I want to now transition to the leaves approach,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Because this is pretty much right up the alley of that. Before we get into the different parts of it, I want
Mhm.
to know, how did you even arrive at this approach? Was it a particular moment, or was it an accumulation of moments over time that told you, all right, we need to formalize this approach and make this something that is scalable for other multilingual learners globally?
Absolutely. It is accumulation, I could say. A series of realizations over the years I taught and over the years I spent as a learner of English language, I could say. So here is this starting of it in terms of me reflecting on my approach. When I did my master's degree in TESOL with applied linguistics, this was in England,
Mhm.
and everything was so difficult for me in the sense that I was 31 years old. I had studied English for so many years. I'd studied linguistics in Turkey for so many years. I had taught in Turkey. I had taught English in Turkey. And
Yes.
then I came to a point where I thought, okay, I want to further my education, my knowledge. So I went to England to do my master's degree. But of course, that was the first time I studied something in an English immersive sort of environment.
Yeah.
So there, we were doing reflections because I'd been a teacher. I was asked to write a reflection on myself as a teacher. I struggled to write. When I reflected on my teaching approach, I have all these ideas, I have all these strategies that I've used, but I struggled to formally put them on paper.
Mm.
And that was an aha moment for me. I just thought, oh, I'm doing what I believe is right, and I see it's working, but there's nothing to pinpoint, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So that was kind of like the starting point of me reflecting on myself as a teacher. And when I read a quote that I love, and that's like the basic to all my teaching approach, leaves approach, etc. This is a quote by Stephen Krashen. He Leaves approach kind of takes its roots from the natural approach to language teaching, which is by Stephen Krashen. And Stephen Krashen in this quote talks about learners needing to be in a safe environment, because if they are in a defensive mode, then
Mm-hmm.
the acquisition is not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, after that quote, I just thought, this is me. This is my approach. I want my students to feel like they belong, like they're seen, like they're
Yes,
accepted.
that's right.
Whatever I'm teaching does not matter. The first thing that is important is that they feel they're welcome in my classroom. They feel that I connect with them. They feel that I value them as who they are. So this quote was kind of like the official start of it in that sense, because it made me realize what I stood for as a teacher, not just as a language acquisition teacher, but as an educator in general.
That's
And
right.
the Leaves approach, in the Leaves approach, let me tell you what it stands for first, and it's going to make more sense. Language, exposure, and acquisition through validation, engagement, and scaffolding.
Woo!
Language, exposure, and acquisition is not just to do with English language, it is to do with their identity languages as well.
Yeah.
They should go hand in hand. They should not be separated. The minute you separate them, either the kids are going to lose their identity languages, which happens so often, to the point that students refuse to study DP, for example, or a higher education in their own languages, because they say, I'm not really good at Korean anymore. I'm not really good at Chinese anymore. And that is sad. So these go hand in hand, both languages, or however many languages there are. And validation and engagement are in the core, because this is about them being humans and
Mm-hmm.
us accepting them, taking them as humans for who they are. And scaffolding is more to do with giving them time, giving them the using the necessary strategies to guide them until they are independent. So you can kind of slowly start taking that scaffolding and they just fly from there on.
Are you ready to take your commitment to identity affirming education to the next level? Then join the forum, the new and exclusive membership space for the Identity Talk community. With membership tiers starting at $3 a month, you'll get early access to podcast episodes, bonus content, our Quam's Quotes monthly newsletter, and monthly live Q&A sessions. You'll also unlock discounts on workshops and products, engage in community discussions, access exclusive community and networking opportunities, and even business ad roles during episodes if you're a sponsor level member. Whether you're an ally, advocate, co-conspirator, accomplice, or a sponsor, there's a place for you in the forum. So head over to identitytalk4educators.com/pricing plans /list and join the movement today. And I think with the scaffolding piece, particularly for monolingual teachers,
That's right.
that
Yeah.
tends to be a struggle
It
because
is a struggle.
with all good intentions, they want to make the content accessible
Yes, of
for their
course.
multilingual learners, but it's a question of how, right?
Absolutely.
So I mean, in what ways can monolingual teachers, and we
Mhm,
have quite a few in our ecosystem,
mhm.
how can they scaffold their content and even their instruction to make it even more accessible for MLs?
Um, so first of all, you're right, Kwame. When they don't have the necessary tools to deal with, they don't know where to start, monolingual teachers especially, or even if they speak another language, so they are multilingual learners themselves, but if
That's
you
right.
don't really reflect on that acquisition process and where they were once as a language learner, it is difficult to really relate to what multilingual learners in their classrooms are going through. Years ago, I remember, so my husband teaches dance and drama. He's an international school teacher as well. Years ago, we had these conversations because I remember watching one of his workshops, and there are my students from Turkey, I think back then, in the workshop as well. And I remember saying to him, "You're speaking way too fast." And he has Yorkshire accent, which might be completely unfamiliar for many students, because when you learn English, especially in Turkish context, it's either the standard American English or the standard British English.
Yes.
So in my students' case, it was the standard RP, standard British English. When they hear Yorkshire accent, where you were saying buzz instead of bus, right? Or Monday instead of Monday. So some native speaker teachers do not realize this, but there's a huge difference between Monday and Monday.
Mm-hmm.
And as a language learner, the minute you don't understand the word, the brain does this. So there's this affective filter, again by Stephen Krashen. You get anxious. You think you're losing the point, and the rest of the sentence is gone as well. Oh, I didn't understand this word. I'm lost now. And then the affective filter is closed. It's not letting any input in after that point. So the students are lost. First things first, please monitor the way you speak with multilingual students.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, you're going to stick to your accent, but I've had so many colleagues from Scotland, Ireland, Wales, New Zealand, Australia. They've all got different accents. Even I sometimes, after all these years of learning English, doing masters in English, teaching English, working in English speaking contexts, I still struggle to understand sometimes. Even native speakers struggle to understand each other, right? Sometimes, if the
Yes.
accent is completely different. So I would definitely recommend somehow being aware of clarity in pronunciation, especially during classes. This is very important. The second thing, these simple shifts that come to my mind right now is visual aids. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, this sounds like a cliche now. Everybody says visual aids, etc. And I know most of my colleagues do not have the time to prepare printouts and
Like
things
an
like
anchor
that. Let's
chart,
be
something
honest.
like that.
Yeah, let's be
Yeah.
honest, right? We don't have time. And I completely understand the apprehension from mainstream subject teachers' point of view. So AI is an amazing, amazing tool right now that we can refer to. And I would definitely recommend taking the advantage of having AI right now. That could be helpful. You could even create amazing slides on AI platforms. You could translate, so that's another resource that you can use on AI. But even body language. Some of my friends, I remember, colleagues again, history teacher, I remember him just thinking lecturing is the best way to teach, which is fine, right? It is a good way of teaching. However, with your accent, multilingual learners in the classroom, if the teacher talking time is too much, you've lost your multilingual students already.
Yeah.
And as you were saying, Kwame, unfortunately, some teachers do believe that multilingual learner students should maybe not be in their classroom. This is very difficult for me to even articulate. However, this is happening. And unfortunately, if we choose to teach internationally, diversity is inevitable. Cultural and linguistic diversity is inevitable. Therefore, we need to adapt for the good of these students. They need our support. They need all these strategies that we can provide for them. So visual aids, using AI platforms in order to help with maybe translation, etc., or even allowing students to use AI platforms to give them guidance. One of the things that multilingual learners struggle with is instructions. When you give a whole A4 page of instructions, even the chunk of words there is intimidating for
Yeah.
students. So giving them the opportunity to just put, if we don't have the time to do that as a teacher, we could just say to the students, please, this is the electronic version, go to an AI platform and just make it accessible for yourselves. How easy is that? In the past, there was no such thing. So as EAL, ELA, or ESL, whatever you call it, supporters, we had to do that for mainstream teachers, whereas AI does it right now. So that's perfect. And also, as I said, maybe slowing down, reducing teacher talking time. These are teeny tiny shifts, but they will make a huge impact.
And I couldn't agree with you more. We can do all those things. Those are within our control.
Yes, yes,
We can't control everything, but we can control that. That we can
absolutely,
do with maximum effort.
absolutely.
So, as we're starting to wrap up, I do want to ask you a question about motherhood, because this is identity. It's not just about what you do in the classroom, it's also about what happens outside the classroom as well. So,
That is
you
correct.
are a
Yeah,
mother of 3 girls.
yeah.
And I know for me as a father, my mindset and even my outlook on life shifted the
Oh,
moment my eldest son was
massively.
born. So, as somebody who is traveling the world and you have children who are in these international school settings
Yes.
and they're exposed to all these different cultures with every stop they've been in, as a mother, how has all that shifted your perspective or shaped it um, within the context of language, culture, and even identity?
Very good question, Kwame. As you said, becoming a parent changes everything massively. Your life
Yes.
almost becomes upside down,
It's
right?
about them
Yeah.
now.
It's about them now, absolutely. So in that sense, yes, in every single decision, my husband and I, we're always thinking about them. When we move to this country, how are they going to feel? How is the language barrier going to affect them? Friendships, social adjustment, etc., etc. So more worries for sure. Yeah, it's not just worry about ourselves, but for them. But also, for me, it's fascinating to see them grow up as third culture kids. Uh, I I didn't grow up in an environment like that. I was always in Turkey, in Turkish educational context, immersed in Turkish, my first language. Um, I went to public schools, so everybody's Turkish around me, etc., etc. So it amazes me to see the resilience, the ability to adjust so quickly. I think this sort of experience makes our kids stronger. And I see that every day. My kids are lucky going to international schools in the sense that one of their first languages is English, which means in terms of communication and that social adjustment, they don't struggle as much. That's why I always think, I always say to them, actually, you're so lucky. My students do not get to do that. They also need to learn the language to make friends, etc. So in that sense, that comparison helps me appreciate and understand what my students are going through. And my kids almost became a little research for me, like a study, sorry. When I remember when my oldest was born, I was just testing things out to see how she's acquiring the first language, etc. And so years later, it brought me to this point, and I share this with my students as well. I say, do you think you're the only ones making mistakes in English? My kids, their first language is English. They still make mistakes all the time. They say brunk, they say catched, all these grammar mistakes. And it comes from this Noam Chomsky universal grammar idea. It's considered as one of the examples to show how first language acquisition and second language acquisition kind of like they are kind of similar. So they make these mistakes all the time. And I say to them, when you're speaking especially, you don't need to worry about anything. So watching my kids acquiring English as their first language and what they're going through as an acquirer gave me that perspective as well that I always share with my students. And other than that, in terms of my kids using Turkish, not being in the Turkish-speaking context is not very helpful, of course, but I do my best to speak Turkish with them, and they do understand all the instructions, etc. However, when it comes to speaking, always the easiest path is chosen. So English is the main communication device, let's call it that way. But I know one day, as I said, first language never fossilizes. So I know one day if they go to a Turkish-speaking context, then it'll come back.
Yes, for sure, for sure. Ooh, Aylin, I've enjoyed this conversation, and
Oh,
like I said
same.
before we started recording, that this could be something that can go well beyond the time, and
Oh,
you've proven that
absolutely.
it can be the case. But I'm gonna wrap up with this question that I ask everybody: how do you stay true to the teacher in you?
I do my best to be myself. I do my best to be authentic and be honest and open, transparent with my students. Because, well, true, as the word itself is within that anyway, I suppose.
Yes.
When I connect with my students, I don't pretend to be something else. I don't pretend to be the source of knowledge. I don't pretend to know everything. I don't get offended when one of my students corrects me. Or I'm just doing my best to be myself and connect with them as much as I can, to get to know them as much as I can, and just guide them. Even the word teacher, sometimes I think to myself, I'm not just a teacher. I don't just teach, because I think it has this meaning of I've got the knowledge, I'm passing that on to you, sort of sense. I try to be a facilitator. I try to be a guide. I try to be a mentor. Educate, all those words that you can think of. So, but I think the direct answer to your question would be trying to be myself and not pretending.
There it is, people. And then finally, how can folks get in contact with you on social media? And also feel free to share the Leaves website where they can get access to some resources focused on multilingual learners.
Of course. So I've got this website, www.leaveseal.com. The website has got all the information, and the website has got my LinkedIn account. So I'm on LinkedIn as well. And I've got an Instagram account, I've got a Facebook account, but all these details are shared on the website anyway. So I think the best place will be the website itself to go to, leaveseal.com. And you can access all sorts of information on the website.
All right. So you heard it first over here on IDTALK4 Educators Live.
Yes,
And we're about
that's
to
right.
wrap up another fantastic episode of this podcast. And on behalf of Aylin, I wish you all a good morning, good afternoon, good night, wherever you are in the world. And we're going to do this again another time. Peace out, everybody.
Bye bye. Thank you so much, Kwame.